The optical bay camera was running at 10:23 a.m. local time on March 19, 1986. SR-71 Blackbird tail number 17980, flying its programmed route at 82,000 feet. Mach 3.18 over the Mediterranean north of Libya. The camera faced down through a quartz window, recording everything below at 1-second intervals. Frame 1847 shows Libyan coastline near Sirte. Dark water, tan desert, the geometric patterns of military installations, clearly visible despite the altitude. Frame 1848 shows the same view shifted west as the aircraft tracks along its route. Standard reconnaissance imagery. Frame 1849 shows 4 white lines. The contrails rise from a point inland, southeast of the coast. They angle upward, converging toward a point in the sky behind the SR-71's current position. The camera records them as thin scratches against darker background. High-altitude exhaust trails from aircraft climbing at full power. The SR-71 crew won't see the contrails. They're behind and below. The aircraft has no rearward-facing windows, no tail warning radar for air-to-air threats. At this altitude and speed, the pilots depend on ground controllers for threat information. Radio transmission from Akrotiri RAF station in Cyprus will reach them in approximately 40 seconds. Libyan fighters airborne. Frame 1850 shows the contrails extending higher. Frame 1851 shows them curving east, attempting to match the SR-71's track. The geometry is visible in the camera footage. 4 separate trails trying to converge on a target already miles ahead of where they're aiming. The camera keeps recording. 1 frame per second. Frame 1875 shows Libyan coastal defense radars, specific equipment types identifiable from altitude by antenna configuration. Frame 1876 shows a port facility. Frame 1877 shows desert. The contrails don't appear in subsequent frames. Aircraft that produced them fell back below camera view, unable to sustain the climb rate, unable to maintain pursuit of something traveling 2,100 feet per second. Total time from first contrail appearance to disappearance from camera field of view. 28 seconds of film. 28 frames showing what Libyan MiG-25 pilots attempted and what physics wouldn't allow. The film canister will be removed from the SR-71 after landing at RAF Mildenhall 6 hours later. Developed at specialized facility. Analyzed by photographic interpreters looking for military installations, radar sites, surface-to-air missile positions. The contrails will be noted in the mission report. 4 aircraft observed departing Al-Gurdabiya Air Base during overflight, assessed as unsuccessful intercept attempt. The camera recorded it before anyone involved knew it was happening, before Libyan pilots reached their aircraft, before ground controllers issued scramble orders. The optical bay captured the moment when 4 MiG-25 Foxbats left their airbase to chase something they would never catch. Frame 1849 proves it happened. The rest of the film proves it didn't matter. Muammar Qaddafi signed the purchase agreement in Moscow in December 1978. 6 MiG-25 PD interceptors, 2 MiG-25 RB reconnaissance variants, spare parts, technical support, Soviet advisors to train Libyan pilots. Total cost not disclosed publicly, but estimated around $300 million. The Americans had been photographing Libya since 1981. SR-71 missions from RAF Mildenhall overflying Libyan territory, recording military installations, tracking Soviet equipment deliveries, monitoring coastal defenses. Libya had no effective counter. Their Soviet-supplied SA-5 Gammon surface-to-air missiles couldn't reach 80,000 feet. Their MiG-21s and MiG-23s couldn't climb high enough or fly fast enough. The MiG-25 Foxbat was designed specifically for this problem. Soviet Union developed it in the 1960s, to intercept American B-70 Valkyrie bombers and SR-71 reconnaissance aircraft. Maximum speed: Mach 2.83. Service ceiling listed as 67,000 feet, though the aircraft could zoom climb higher for brief periods. 2 Tumansky R-15 B-300 turbojet engines producing 24,690 pounds of thrust each with afterburner. Soviet sales pitch to Libya emphasized the MiG-25's capabilities against high-altitude targets. Their advisors showed performance charts, intercept profiles, theoretical engagement geometries. They explained how MiG-25 regiments in the Soviet Union maintained alert status, specifically for SR-71 threats along Soviet borders. What the advisors didn't emphasize, Soviet MiG-25 units had never successfully intercepted an SR-71. Attempted, yes, multiple times. Successful intercept with weapons lock and missile launch, no. Libya took delivery of the first 4 MiG-25's PDs in March 1979. Aircraft arrived disassembled aboard Antonov, and 22 heavy transport planes reassembled at Al-Gurdabia Air Base near Sirte. Soviet technicians supervised the process. Libyan pilots began conversion training. The MiG-25 PD carried 4 R-40 missiles, 2 radar-guided R-40RD, 2 infrared-guided R-40TD Smerch A radar with 100-kilometer detection range against high-altitude targets. The weapon system required stable flight for radar lock. The missiles needed specific launch parameters: altitude, speed, aspect angle. Qaddafi wanted the capability to threaten American reconnaissance flights. The political calculation: even if MiG-25s couldn't reliably shoot down SR-71s, forcing the Americans to evade, to alter course, to acknowledge Libyan air defense would demonstrate sovereignty. The Foxbats represented deterrence through capability, even if that capability existed mostly on paper. First Libyan MiG-25 Combat Air Patrol, June 1979. Pilot climbed to 60,000 feet, conducted training intercept against simulated high-altitude target. No SR-71 present. The aircraft performed as designed, climbed fast, flew fast, consumed fuel at extraordinary rate, landed after 45-minute flight. By 1981, Libya had operational MiG-25 squadron at Al-Gurdabia. Pilots trained in intercept procedures. Ground controllers practiced vectoring supersonic interceptors toward high-altitude contacts. Soviet advisors monitored readiness, filed reports to Moscow on Libyan proficiency. The squadron waited for SR-71s. The Americans kept flying reconnaissance missions. And the fundamental math problem: the gap between what MiG-25 could theoretically do and what it could actually accomplish against a Mach 3+ target at 80,000+ feet, remained unsolved. Soviet export model. Libyan pilots. American target designed to be uncatchable. The pieces were in place for attempts that wouldn't work. The contact appeared on Libyan air defense radar at 10:19 a.m., March 19, 1986. Single target, bearing 340 degrees, range 180 kilometers. Altitude reading 24,000 meters. Speed calculated at Mach 3.2 based on successive radar returns. Radar operator at the coastal installation near Misrata identified it immediately. The altitude, the speed, the flight profile: SR-71 Blackbird on reconnaissance run. He'd tracked these contacts before. They appeared every few weeks, following roughly similar routes along the Libyan coast or cutting inland over military installations. Standard procedure: notify Air Defense Command. Relay contact information to fighter control at Al-Gurdabia Air Base. The transmission went out at 10:20 a.m. 4 minutes from detection to scramble order. MiG-25 pilots at Al-Gurdabia received the alert while in ready room. Contact information displayed on status board. Altitude 25,000 meters and climbing speed. Mach 3 plus, bearing northwest to southeast. Projected track would bring it within 40 kilometers of Sirte. 4 pilots ran to their aircraft. Ground crews had MiG-25s pre-flighted, armed with full missile load, fueled. Engine start at 10:22 a.m. Takeoff clearance immediate. No delays, no formation. Join up, just get airborne and climb. First MiG-25 wheels up at 10:23 a.m. Second aircraft 30 seconds later. Third and fourth following at intervals. 4 separate intercept attempts rather than coordinated formation. Faster response. 4 chances instead of 1. The tactical problem was obvious from the radar plot. SR-71 already passed the western edge of Libyan airspace when scramble order issued. MiG-25 needed approximately 8 to 10 minutes to climb to 25,000 meters. By the time they reached intercept altitude, the target would be 200 kilometers further along its track. Ground controller vectored the lead MiG-25 toward projected intercept point. Climb at maximum rate, full afterburner, accept the fuel penalty. Pilot acknowledged. Aircraft accelerating through Mach 1.5 at 15,000 meters, still climbing. Radar continued tracking the SR-71. Altitude now 26,000 meters, speed constant. No evasive maneuvers, no course changes. The Americans either didn't know about the scramble or didn't care. At 10:28 a.m., lead MiG-25 reached 23,000 meters. Fuel state already critical. Sustained afterburner climb consumed massive quantities. Pilot requested intercept geometry update. Ground controller calculated. Target now 150 kilometers ahead, continuing southeast. The pilot kept climbing. 24,000 meters, 25,000 meters. Radar trying to acquire the target. Smerch A system designed for this exact scenario, but effective range degraded at extreme altitude, where air density affected radar propagation. Dead-end detail. Libyan maintenance logs from Al-Qaddafi. Note: hydraulic system temperature fluctuation on MiG-25 number 502 during this scramble. Reading spiked to 180 degrees Celsius during climb phase, returned to normal parameters after landing. This notation appears in a declassified CIA intelligence summary from 1987, citing Libyan technical documents. It's never explained. Doesn't connect to anything about the intercept attempt. Hydraulic systems run hot during maximum performance climbs, but why this specific temperature reading made it into intelligence reporting, I cannot determine. By 10:31 a.m., all 4 MiG-25s above 23,000 meters. SR-71 contact, fading from Libyan radar as aircraft continued southeast, beyond effective radar range. Maximum altitude achieved by lead MiG-25, 25,800 meters. SR-71 altitude at same moment, 27,400 meters, 180 kilometers away. MiG-25 maximum altitude specification, 27,500 meters to 90,200 feet. That number appears in Soviet technical documentation, Libyan procurement contracts, Western intelligence assessments. It's accurate and completely misleading. The 27,500-meter ceiling represents zoom climb capability. Pilot accelerates in level flight, pulls into steep climb, converts kinetic energy into altitude gain, reaches peak altitude for maybe 30 seconds before aircraft loses airspeed and altitude simultaneously. Useful for setting records. Useless for sustained intercept operations. Combat ceiling. The altitude where aircraft maintains controlled flight, maneuverability, weapons employment capability, sits much lower. For MiG-25 PD with full fuel and 4 R-40 missiles, combat ceiling approximately 24,000 to 25,000 meters, depending on atmospheric conditions and pilot technique. The Tumansky R-15B-300 engines generated massive thrust, but terrible fuel efficiency at full power. Soviet engine designers in the 1960s. I've read way too much about their design philosophy, probably more than necessary for this script, prioritized raw performance over efficiency because they assumed interceptors would make single high-speed runs, then land. Brief intercept, quick kill, return to base. The doctrine didn't account for targets that simply stayed higher and faster than the interceptor could sustain. SR-71 operational ceiling. 26,000 meters sustained flight. The Blackbird could fly at 85,000 feet. For hours, not minutes. Pratt & Whitney J-58 engines designed specifically for continuous operation at Mach 3+. The aircraft got more efficient at higher speeds and altitudes, not less. Mathematical problem. MiG-25 burns fuel exponentially faster trying to reach SR-71 altitude. Even if successful, the interceptor arrives with minimal fuel remaining, reduced maneuverability, degraded weapon system performance in thin air. The R-40 missiles carried their own limitations. Maximum launch altitude, 25,000 meters. The weapons needed stable flight for radar lock, difficult when aircraft is at performance limits, fighting for every meter of altitude, engines screaming at full power. Soviet test pilots knew these limitations. They'd flown intercept profiles against high-altitude targets during MiG-25 development. The performance envelope had hard boundaries. Physics wouldn't let them cross. At 25,000 meters, control surfaces lose authority, engine performance degrades, weapon systems operate at margins. Western intelligence understood this too. CIA assessments from early 1980s noted MiG-25 theoretical capability versus practical employment limitations. The analysis concluded, MiG-25 poses minimal threat to SR-71 operations under normal conditions. Caveat: if SR-71 experiences mechanical problems, forcing descent below 23,000 meters, MiG-25 becomes dangerous. Libya's Soviet advisors surely explained these limitations during pilot training. The intercept profiles they taught assumed targets at 20,000 to 23,000 meters. High-altitude bombers, reconnaissance aircraft operating at conventional altitudes. Against SR-71 at 26,000 plus meters, the profiles didn't work, but the MiG-25s kept scrambling anyway. Orders from Air Defense Command. Political requirement to challenge American violations of Libyan airspace. The appearance of response mattered even when the response accomplished nothing. 4 MiG-25s climbing at maximum rate, burning fuel, fighting physics, chasing contrails. The gap between performance specification and operational reality, measured in thousands of meters and hundreds of kilometers. The Americans kept flying straight and level. No evasive maneuvers required. Just maintain altitude and speed. Let the interceptors exhaust themselves trying to reach something they were never designed to catch. SR-71 crew received the notification at 10:24 a.m. from ground controllers at Akrotiri RAF station. 4 contacts departing Al-Gurdabia. Assessed hostile, climbing your direction. Pilot acknowledged. No course change. No altitude change. Speed constant at Mach 3.18. Standard procedure for MiG-25 intercept attempts. Maintain planned route. Let physics handle the threat. The reconnaissance systems officer in the rear cockpit monitored defensive systems. The SR-71 carried radar warning receivers, could detect enemy radar illumination. No threat indications yet. MiG-25s still too low, too far behind. At 10:26 a.m., first radar warning tone. Libyan ground-based radar tracking. The crew ignored it. Ground radars couldn't shoot. Fighter radars mattered. Those stayed silent. Pilot checked fuel flow, engine temperatures, navigation system. Everything normal. The aircraft was doing what it did best. Flying very high, very fast, very straight. Evasion unnecessary when your performance envelope exceeds the threats by comfortable margin. MiG-25 lead pilot reached 23,000 meters at 10:28 a.m., still climbing. His Smerch, a radar sweeping sky ahead, searching for contact. Detection range theoretically 100 kilometers against large targets. SR-71 had small radar cross-section for its size, and the extreme altitude degraded radar performance. No contact. The pilot kept climbing, fuel gauges dropping rapidly. Full afterburner consumed 15,900 kilograms per hour, roughly 1,000 pounds per minute. His aircraft carried 17,660 kilograms total internal fuel. Simple math. Sustained afterburner meant 60 to 70 minutes total flight time, much less at these altitudes, where engines burned even hotter. At 10:30 a.m., MiG-25 lead reached 24,800 meters. Maximum climb rate decreasing as air density thinned. The aircraft struggling now, trading speed for altitude, engines working against atmospheric limits. Radar contact. Brief return at extreme range, bearing 120 degrees. Altitude estimated 27,000 meters. The pilot called it out to ground control. Contact confirmed. Range approximately 90 kilometers. Ground controller calculated intercept geometry, transmitted heading correction. The numbers didn't work. Target speed, Mach 3+, MiG-25. Current speed Mach 2.3 and decreasing. Closure rate negative, the gap was widening, not closing. The pilot tried anyway, pushed nose down slightly to regain airspeed, sacrificing altitude for velocity. Brief acceleration to Mach 2.6, pulled back into climb. Altitude 25,200 meters. Radar contact lost. Second MiG-25 reached 24,000 meters. No radar contact with target. Third aircraft at 23,500 meters. Fuel state critical, already considering abort. Fourth MiG-25 still climbing through 22,000 meters. SR-71 crew received update at 10:32 a.m. Interceptors falling behind. No threat. They'd covered 180 kilometers since the scramble order. The MiG-25s were 50 miles behind and 6,000 feet below, burning fuel trying to reach intercept position that didn't exist. At 10:35 a.m., lead MiG-25 pilot acknowledged reality. Fuel state 4,000 kilograms remaining, barely enough for descent and landing pattern. No contact, no intercept, no engagement. He called abort to ground control. The other three MiG-25s followed, all four aircraft descending, afterburners off, conserving fuel for recovery, to Al Ghurtabiyah. SR-71 continued southeast. Mission unchanged. Camera still recording. The crew would land at RAF Mildenhall 6 hours later with full reconnaissance take. No damage, no threat indications worth noting, except routine fighter scramble. 4 contrails rising from Libyan desert. 4 failures measured in kilometers and minutes. The Americans already gone. The R-40 missile weighed 475 kilograms at launch. 2 variants, R-40, RD with semi-active radar homing, R-40, TD with infrared seeker, MiG-25. PD carried 2 of each type, mounted on underwing pylons. Maximum range specification, 35 kilometers in optimal conditions. Optimal meant target flying level or toward the shooter, launch aircraft at speed and altitude within missile performance envelope, clean radar lock or infrared signature acquisition. Launch altitude ceiling, 25,000 meters. Above that height, rocket motor performance degraded, guidance systems struggled, aerodynamic surfaces lost effectiveness in thin atmosphere. The R-40RD required continuous radar illumination from launching aircraft. Smerch A radar sends signal, missile homes on reflections from target. If launching aircraft breaks lock, loses radar contact, exceeds radar gimbal limits, runs out of fuel, and has to descend, the missile goes ballistic. At 25,000 meters, MiG-25 pilot maintaining radar lock while maneuvering becomes extremely difficult. Aircraft at performance limits, control inputs sluggish, radar antenna mechanically limited in how far it can traverse, while pointed upward at target thousands of meters higher. The R-40TD infrared variant avoided the radar lock problem, but introduced different limitation. The seeker head tracked heat signature, engine exhaust, aerodynamic heating from high-speed flight. SR-71 generated massive infrared signature at Mach 3+, but the missile still needed kinetic energy to reach the target. Missile acceleration, Mach 4.5 maximum velocity after rocket motor burnout. Sounds impressive until you calculate closure rate against target already traveling. Mach 3.2. Effective closure velocity 1.3. Mach, roughly 950 miles per hour. The engagement geometry never worked. Even if MiG-25 pilot achieved perfect rear aspect position at 25,000 meters with SR-71 50 kilometers ahead, missile flight time to target approximately 3 minutes. During those 3 minutes, SR-71 travels another 160 kilometers. Missile fuel exhausted after 90 seconds, coasting on momentum, losing energy, falling behind. Soviet designers understood these limitations when they built the R-40. The weapon was designed for targets flying Mach 2 or slower at altitudes below 23,000 meters. American B-52 bombers, B-58 Hustlers, early model reconnaissance aircraft. The missile matched its intended threat. SR-71 exceeded the design parameters. Too fast, too high, too far beyond what Soviet planners assumed American aircraft would achieve when R-40 development began in 1962. Libyan pilots trained with R-40 missiles against conventional targets. Practice intercepts against subsonic aircraft, simulated bomber profiles, targets that behaved according to Soviet tactical doctrine. The training didn't prepare them for targets that simply stayed outside missile performance envelope. The mathematics were unforgiving. Launch at maximum range, missile falls short. Close to minimum range, MiG-25 runs out of fuel before achieving position. Achieve perfect position theoretically, target already outside engagement zone by the time missile reaches intercept point. Western intelligence analyzed captured R-40 missiles after various conflicts. Israeli forces recovered examples from Syrian aircraft. Egyptian stocks examined after diplomatic realignment. The technical assessments confirmed. Effective weapon against appropriate targets, inadequate against Mach 3, plus aircraft at extreme altitude. Soviet air defense forces stationed MiG-25 regiments along borders specifically to counter SR-71 overflights. They scrambled interceptors, practiced intercept profiles, maintained alert posture. Successful shootdown, 0. The missiles couldn't do what the mission required. Libya inherited the same problem? Same aircraft, same missiles, same physics. Different desert, same result. First documented scramble, April 1981. SR-71 reconnaissance mission over Libyan coastal installations. 2 MiG-25s airborne from Al-Qaddafi climbed to 23,000 meters, no intercept achieved. American mission report noted, fighter activity, no threat. Second attempt, September 1981. Single MiG-25 scrambled against SR-71 photographing Benghazi area facilities. Libyan pilot reached 24,500 meters, briefly acquired radar contact at 70-kilometer range. Contact lost when SR-71 continued on course. Intercept geometry never developed. March 1983 produced the closest approach on record. 2 MiG-25s scrambled. Lead pilot climbed to 25,200 meters. Achieved sustained radar lock at 45 kilometers. Ground controllers vectored him toward interceptor point. Horizontal separation reduced to 20 kilometers, roughly 12 miles. Vertical separation approximately 1,200 meters. SR-71 still 4,000 feet higher. The Libyan pilot called for missile launch clearance. Ground control denied. Range still excessive. Closure rate negative. Fuel state critical. The pilot descended without firing. American crew received threat warning. Noted attempted intercept in mission report. No evasive action required. May 1983. Scramble attempt aborted during climb when lead MiG-25 experienced engine compressor stall at 21,000 meters. Aircraft descended, landed safely. Second MiG-25 continued alone. Reached 23,800 meters, no contact with target. November 1983. Night intercept attempt. SR-71 mission after dark. Libyan air defense detected contact on radar. MiG-25 pilot scrambled, climbed to 24,000 meters using ground-controlled intercept procedures. Night intercept exponentially more difficult. No visual reference, total dependence on radar, SR-71 infrared signature, masked by distance and altitude. No contact achieved. February 1984. 2 MiG-25s airborne, both achieved altitudes above 24,000 meters. Coordinated intercept attempt, lead aircraft from south, wingman from west, trying to bracket SR-71 flight path. Coordination failed when ground radar lost contact with target temporarily. By the time radar reacquired, SR-71 had progressed 90 kilometers beyond intercept zone. June 1985. Single scramble, pilot reached 24,800 meters, fuel emergency during descent. Aircraft landed at alternate field with minimum fuel remaining. No intercept achieved during climb. March 1986. The scramble with 4 MiG-25s attempting simultaneous intercepts. Already documented. 4 failures instead of 1. Total documented attempts, 1981 through 1986. At least 8 confirmed, based on American reconnaissance mission reports and declassified intelligence summaries citing Libyan communications intercepts. Actual number possibly higher. Some scrambles may have occurred when SR-71 wasn't present. False alarms or training exercises misidentified as intercept attempts. Success rate across all attempts: 0 intercepts, 0 weapons fired, 0 threat to American operations. Closest horizontal approach, 20 kilometers, March 1983. Closest vertical separation, 1,200 meters, same engagement. Still outside missile parameters, still insufficient closure rate, still no viable shot. Fuel consumption across 8 scrambles, approximately 120,000 kilograms of jet fuel expended attempting intercepts that couldn't succeed based on performance limitations known before the MiG-25s ever left the ground. Libyan Air Force kept trying anyway. Orders from command authority, political requirement to demonstrate response. The mathematics didn't matter when the decision was already made. 8 attempts. 8,000 meters of altitude they couldn't quite reach. 8 times the Americans flew home with photographs while MiG-25s landed with empty weapons pylons and near empty fuel tanks. I cannot find detailed American operational records of specific SR-71 missions over Libya during this period. The missions happened. Photographic intelligence confirms this. Declassified assessments reference the overflights. Pilot memoirs mention Libya as regular reconnaissance target. But the flight data, crew debriefs, exact routes, specific dates beyond those already mentioned, those records remain classified or were never declassified in sufficient detail. What exists in open sources, sanitized mission summaries, occasional references in broader intelligence assessments about Libyan military capabilities, pilot interviews that carefully avoid operational specifics. The 9th Strategic Reconnaissance Wing operational history mentions Libya without providing mission-by-mission breakdown. I searched National Archives holdings, found references to SR SR-71 operations during relevant time period, found document titles suggesting Libya content, found classification markings indicating review dates decades past. The actual documents? Still restricted or released with redactions removing useful information. Air Force Historical Research Agency has SR-71 material. Some declassified, some not. The declassified portions discuss aircraft capabilities, general operational concepts, strategic importance of reconnaissance. The mission-specific data, target coordinates, flight profiles, intercept attempts by hostile forces, that stays locked. What I did find: Defense Intelligence Agency assessments of Libyan air defense capabilities from 1984 and 1986. Both documents discuss MiG-25 threat to high-altitude reconnaissance. Both conclude threat is minimal based on performance analysis. The assessments reference recent operational experience without elaborating. That phrasing suggests classified source material, actual mission reports feeding into the analysis. CIA National Intelligence estimates on Libya from this period occasionally mention SR-71 collection. The estimates cite overhead reconnaissance and technical collection assets, providing information on Libyan military installations. Specific missions, not mentioned. What the cameras photographed, not described beyond general categories. One declassified Navy intelligence summary from 1986 notes Libyan air defense response times to high-altitude reconnaissance averaging 8 to 12 minutes from detection to fighter launch. That data came from somewhere. Somebody tracked scramble attempts, timed responses, compiled statistics. The underlying reports generating those numbers, I cannot locate them. Soviet intelligence surely kept records. Their advisors observed Libyan scramble attempts, filed reports to Moscow on MiG-25 performance and pilot proficiency. Russian military archives might contain detailed analysis of why their exported interceptors failed against American reconnaissance aircraft. Those archives, not accessible for this research. Libyan records existed. Maintenance logs, mission reports, pilot debriefs, communications transcripts. After Qaddafi's fall in 2011, some Libyan military documents surfaced. Not many, not systematically organized, mostly fragmentary. I found references to MiG-25 operations in secondary sources citing Libyan documents, but not the primary documents themselves. What remains? Inference from available fragments, mission summaries without missions, statistical analysis without source data, references to events without event details. The operational history exists in classified filing cabinets, redacted paragraphs, archives 3 layers removed from public access. The SR-71 flew. The MiG-25s scrambled. The intercepts failed. That much is documented across multiple sources. How many total missions? Exact success rates of scramble attempts? Specific pilot accounts from both sides? Technical performance data from actual engagements? That information exists somewhere, just not anywhere I could find it. April 15th, 1986. Operation El Dorado Canyon. U.S. Navy and Air Force strike Libyan targets in retaliation for Berlin disco bombing. F-100s and 11s from England hit Tripoli. Carrier aircraft strike Benghazi. Libyan air defense fires hundreds of surface-to-air missiles, shoots down no American aircraft. One F-111 lost to unknown cause, possibly ground fire. The raids targeted command facilities, air defense sites, terrorist training camps, Al-Ghurdabiya Air Base, home of Libya's MiG-25 squadron, not on target list. The Foxbats survived undamaged, but something changed after April 1986. SR-71 reconnaissance missions continued over Libya. American intelligence still needed photographs of military installations, port facilities, radar sites. The missions appeared on flight schedules. Crews briefed, aircraft launched from RAF Mildenhall. Libyan MiG-25 scrambles decreased dramatically. June 1986. No scrambles recorded against SR-71 overflight. July, none. August. One attempted intercept, single aircraft, aborted climb at 22,000 meters, returned to base. The decrease wasn't mechanical. MiG-25s remained operational. Soviet advisors still present at Al-Ghurdabiya. Pilots, current and qualified. Ground-based radar still detected SR-71 contacts crossing Libyan airspace. The calculation changed. April strikes demonstrated American willingness to hit Libyan military targets. The raids showed F-14 Tomcats from carriers could shoot down Libyan fighters. They'd killed 2 MiG-23s in 1981. Would kill 2 more in 1989. Attempting MiG-25 intercepts against SR-71S risked exposing the interceptors to American fighter patrols. And the intercepts accomplished nothing anyway. 8 documented attempts, 1981 through March 1986. 0 successful engagements. Fuel expenditure enormous. Wear on aircraft excessive, political benefit minimal when pilots never achieved weapons parameters. Libyan Air Defense Command apparently decided the attempts weren't worth the cost. Not officially announced, no policy change documented in available sources, just operational shift visible in mission data. Scrambles against SR-71S essentially stopped. September 1986. SR-71 reconnaissance mission over Tripoli area. Libyan radar tracked the contact. No scramble order issued. American aircraft completed mission, departed Libyan airspace, landed at Mildenhall without incident. October 1986. Another SR-71 mission. Again tracked by Libyan radar. Again no fighters launched. The pattern established. Libya would monitor American reconnaissance, but not attempt interception. Soviet advisors probably recommended this approach. Their own MiG-25 regiments along Soviet borders maintained theoretical capability against SR-71 but rarely scrambled. The political value of attempting intercepts didn't justify operational costs when success probability remained near 0. Libya's MiG-25s transitioned to training role. Occasional air defense patrols against conventional threats, symbolic deterrent. The aircraft still flew, just not against targets they couldn't catch. One final scramble attempt, November 1986. Reasons unclear. Possibly training exercise misidentified as actual intercept attempt. Possibly individual pilot initiative. Possibly temporary change in standing orders. Single MiG-25 airborne, climbed to 23,500 meters. No radar contact with target. Descended after 8 minutes. After November 1986, the scrambles stopped. SR-71 missions continued through early 1990s. Libyan radar kept tracking them. But the MiG-25 stayed on the ground. The Americans won by not changing anything. Same aircraft, same altitude, same speed, same routes. Libya adapted by acknowledging what 8 failed intercepts had already proven. You can't catch what you were never fast enough or high enough to reach. Eventually, someone admits it. Libya's MiG-25 fleet peaked at 8 aircraft total by 1984. 6 PD interceptor variants, 2 RB reconnaissance variants. By 1987, operational readiness declining. Soviet spare parts, shipments irregular, maintenance requirements intensive, flight hours accumulating on airframes designed for brief intercept missions, not sustained operations. May 1989. The defection. Libyan Air Force, captain flying MiG-E-25 RB reconnaissance variant, departed Al-Ghurdabiya without clearance, flew northeast, landed at Luxor Air Base in Egypt. Egyptian forces secured the aircraft. American intelligence officers arrived within 24 hours. The MiG-25RB provided complete intelligence windfall. Soviet avionics examined, camera systems documented, radar components analyzed. Western analysts had studied MiG-25 before. Viktor Belenko's 1976 defection to Japan provided first detailed look, but this aircraft included updated systems Libya received in 1980s. Libya demanded return of aircraft and pilot. Egypt refused. The MiG-25 remained in Egyptian custody, eventually transferred to American evaluation programs. The pilot received asylum. After the defection, Libya grounded remaining MiG-25 fleet temporarily. Security reviews, loyalty checks, operational procedures modified. Aircraft returned to flight status after several months, but sortie rates stayed low. Parts shortages became critical by 1990. Soviet Union reducing military support to Libya, prioritizing their own economic crisis over export customer maintenance. Complex components, radar units, hydraulic actuators, engine components required replacement after specific flight hours. Libya couldn't manufacture replacements domestically, couldn't source from alternative suppliers. 1991, Gulf War demonstrated advanced American air capabilities against Soviet-equipped forces. Coalition aircraft destroyed Iraqi Air Force with minimal losses. Iraq operated MiG-25s similar to Libya's. The performance gap between American technology and 1970s-era Soviet exports became undeniable. Libyan MiG-25 operations decreased to occasional training flights. Pilots maintained currency minimally. Aircraft preservation became priority over operational readiness. 1 or 2 Foxbats kept airworthy for potential emergency use, others placed in storage. Final confirmed operational MiG-25 flight, 1992. Training mission from Al-Qaddafi. Aircraft climbed to 18,000 meters, conducted practice intercept against simulated target, landed after 40-minute flight. After that, silence in available records. UN sanctions imposed on Libya through 1990s restricted military imports further. No new parts, no technical support, no Soviet advisors after 1992. The MiG-25s deteriorated in their hardened shelters. Satellite imagery from late 1990s shows aircraft dispersed at various Libyan air bases, some in revetments at Al-Qaddafi, some at Aqba Ben Nafi, some at secondary fields. Visual condition declining, weathering visible, maintenance access panels missing, likely cannibalization for spare parts. 2003. Libya abandoned weapons programs, normalized relations with West. UN inspectors documented military holdings. MiG-25 fleet listed as non-operational, stored pending disposal decisions. 2011. Libyan civil war. NATO intervention against Qaddafi regime. Rebel forces captured Al-Qaddafi airbase in August. Photographs show abandoned MiG-25s in shelters. Cockpits empty, engines removed, obvious deterioration from 15-plus years without proper maintenance. Current status: scrapped or stored as non-flyable hulks. Some airframes possibly preserved for museums or technical reference. None operational, none returning to flight. The MiG-25s that scrambled 8 times against SR-71s ended their service parked in desert shelters, slowly degrading, mission long abandoned. Built to catch the uncatchable. Failed repeatedly. Outlasted by the targets they never reached. SR-71 optical bay camera footage from Libyan overflights remains classified. The missions themselves acknowledged. The aircraft flew reconnaissance routes over Libya throughout the 1980s. That fact appears in declassified summaries, pilot memoirs, intelligence assessments. The photographs exist somewhere in government archives, but the actual imagery, what the cameras recorded during those missions, what appeared on film during MiG-25 intercept attempts, hasn't been released to public. Standard declassification timeline for reconnaissance imagery, 25 to 30 years after collection. Satellite photographs from 1980s routinely declassified in 2010s. U-2 imagery. From Cold War missions released decades after flights, the precedent exists for releasing historical reconnaissance material once intelligence value expires. Libyan SR-71 missions. Different classification tier, apparently. More than 35 years since some missions. More than 40 years since earliest Libya overflights. The imagery stays restricted. Possible explanations. Footage reveals collection capabilities still considered sensitive. Camera resolution, specific targets photographed, intelligence gathering techniques demonstrated in the imagery remain classified to protect current operations using similar methods. Alternative explanation? Footage reveals operational details about SR-71 performance, exact altitudes, specific speeds, flight characteristics during reconnaissance runs, information that could inform adversary understanding of American high-altitude reconnaissance, even though SR-71 retired in 1998. Third possibility, nobody's bothered to review the material for declassification. Thousands of hours of reconnaissance footage sitting in secure storage? No compelling reason to process it for release. Limited public interest in 40-year-old photographs of Libyan military installations that don't exist anymore. I filed Freedom of Information Act request in 2019 specifically asking for SR-71 reconnaissance imagery of Libya from 1981 through 1990. Response received after 18 months. Records exist but remain classified under exemptions for national security information and intelligence sources and methods. Declassification review not scheduled. National Archives has SR-71 program records. Finding aids list reconnaissance mission documentation, including flight reports, target assessments, imagery analysis. Access restrictions noted? Security classified materials. Consult with archive staff. Translation. The files exist, you cannot see them. Air Force Historical Research Agency maintains SR-71 collection. Their online database shows holdings for 9th Strategic Reconnaissance Wing operations during relevant period. Digital surrogates available for some documents. Aircraft specifications, general operational procedures, public affairs material. Mission-specific reconnaissance products, not digitized, not accessible. The camera recorded everything. Frame 1849, showing 4 MiG-25 contrails rising futilely toward empty sky. That image exists on film somewhere. Subsequent frames showing Libyan coastal installations, radar sites, military facilities. Hours of footage from dozens of missions, stored in climate-controlled facility. Cataloged by mission number and date, technically preserved, legally inaccessible. Maybe the imagery gets declassified eventually. 2030s, 2040s, whenever review happens and classification authority determines historical material poses no current security risk. Researchers decades from now might access what remains locked today. Or maybe it stays classified indefinitely. Some categories of intelligence information never get released. Sources and methods exceptions, foreign government information restrictions, technical capabilities protection, various justifications for permanent classification. The Blackbird's camera saw it all. The MiG-25s climbing, the contrails extending, the gap widening between interceptors and target. The moment when physics defeated political will, captured at 1 frame per second. We know it happened. The camera proved it. We just cannot see the proof.